Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Eerie News, and today we are going to go into a mysterious place here in the United States. Well, it's mysterious and not mysterious. How's that? It's the Hearst Castle out in San Simeon, California. Right, and of course, what's that saying of walls could talk? But anyway, it's out of Stranger Than Fiction stories, and this is titled The Mystery of the Moving Rug. Hearst Castle, once known as La Cuesta Encantada, hosted the most lavish parties during Prohibition and into the 30s. Famous actors, politicians, and notables of the day all vied for an invitation from William Randolph Hearst and his mistress Marion Davies. In short, it was the center of California society. By 1963, the parties had finished and the Hearst family had given the property to the state of California. Stories circulated that the sound of clinking glass, music, and conversation drifted in the night as if the festivities were still being carried on. However, the celebrities were gone, and only tourists filed through the rooms, filled with beautiful objects Mr. Hearst had collected throughout his lifetime. Among them were rugs, hundreds of them, that covered the floors of the castle and the guest houses. But there was one rug that was different. It was in a bedroom of an upper story in the South Tower. Tourists were not allowed there. The staff noticed that mysteriously this one rug would curl up against a bedpost, no matter how often they straightened it out. One of the guides said, "We straightened it out, and then the next time someone enters the room, the rug is out of place. No one goes in there except the staff. None of us will admit, at least, to curling up a corner of the rug, so how does it get disarranged?" The staff described an eerie sensation and that the hairs on the back of their necks seemed to prickle. The castle had opened in 1958, and the public wanted to see more of it. Plans were made to open up that section to the public. Was a newspaper article just a ploy to entice the public to visit the soon-to-open rooms in the Hearst Castle? Once the tours ended, 55 employees roamed among the lonely corridors. Could it have been just their imagination that made them look over their shoulder because they felt the presence of an unseen someone watching them? Perhaps it was Mr. Hearst or Marion Davies. Even in those years, the guides never mentioned her name, despite her 34-year relationship with Hearst. Hearst Castle was constructed between 1919 and 1947. The apparition of Hearst himself is seen wandering around or sitting at his desk in the study. A woman in white is believed to be Marion Davies. A child has been seen playing in the garden, and a ghostly butler still follows the routine he performed many years before. There is also the mysterious death of film producer Thomas Ince when he was 44 years old. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, but rumors quickly spread that Ince had been murdered. On November 5, 1924, W.R. Hearst visited Ince's Diaz Dorados estate at 1051 Benedict Canyon Drive and invited Ince to celebrate his birthday on his yacht Oneida. The men were also to continue ongoing negotiations to lease Ince's studio. At dinner Sunday night, Ince suffered from severe indigestion after consuming salted almonds and champagne, which aggravated his peptic ulcers. Ince was taken to Del Mar, where he was joined by his wife Nell and his eldest son William. From there he was taken to his home in Los Angeles, where he died. Dr. Ida Glasgow, Ince's personal physician, signed the death certificate, citing angina pectoris as the cause of death. William Ince, who became a doctor, said his father's symptoms resembled thrombosis. The Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story that read, "Movie producer shot on Hearst yacht." By evening, the headline had disappeared. Ince's obituary and the San Diego district attorney cited his death as a result of heart disease. His body was cremated since he and his wife were theosophists. Despite the official story, others circulated which described where Hearst shot Ince in the head after mistaking him for Charlie Chaplin. Torarichi Kono, Chaplin's valet, said he saw when Ince was brought ashore on a stretcher in San Diego, and he was bleeding from a bullet wound to the head. The story spread like wildfire among the Japanese domestic workers in Beverly Hills. In 1934, Kono had a falling out with Chaplin. Before the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, Kono was arrested by the FBI for connections to Japanese spies. It was suspected he was helping gather intelligence on U.S. battleships. He was in the process of being deported when the attack on Pearl Harbor took place. He was sent to an internment camp until 1948. He returned to Japan in the 1950s and died in 1971. He was the only person who admitted to being an actual witness of what happened to Ince, based on the story that Hearst wanted to shoot Chaplin because he believed Marion Davies was having an affair with Chaplin. Marion Davies' nephew, Charles Lederer, told a similar story to Orson Welles, who then told Peter Bogdanovich, who directed the film The Cat's Meow. Eleanor Glynn, who was on board the Oneida, told Eleanor Boardman that everyone on the ship had been sworn to secrecy. The LA Times described where Ince's casket remained open for 1 hour prior to his cremation, and no witnesses described a bullet wound on his skull. There were also stories whispered that Luella Parson, Hearst movie columnist, was on the Oneida when Ince took ill. After this, she got a lifetime contract and an expanded syndication with a newspaper. Was this hush money? Another story is that Hearst set up a trust fund for Nell Ince, and he paid off the mortgage on Ince's Chateau Elysee apartment building. These were only rumors and never verified one way or another. Whether Hearst himself was involved in Ince's death, or it was an accident or natural causes, many believe that Ince's death left a lingering presence at the Hearst Castle. Another scandal attached to Marion Davies and William Randolph Hearst was Patricia Van Cleve, born in 1924. It was speculated she was really the daughter of Hearst and Davies. Originally, it was stated her parents were Marion's sister, Rosemary, and her first husband, George Van Cleve. After Patricia's death in 1993, the Lake family claimed the baby was born during a trip Hearst and Davies took to France in 1923. The infant was given to her maternal aunt Rosemary, whose own child had died, and the birth certificate was altered with a new identity, changing her birth year to 1919. In 1928, a divorce decree was granted to Rose Van Cleve from her husband George, who was 23 years older than her. She based her complaint on infidelity and allegations of cruelty. She said that he once took their daughter away for 3 months without explanation and where she was. Rumors were that Hearst was the one who hired detectives to find where he was staying with the girl. Patricia Van Cleve married Arthur Lake in 1937 when she was 14 years old and Lake was 32. The marriage was celebrated at Hearst Castle, and supposedly Hearst told her the truth of her parentage on this day. Remember, she might have appeared older by 4 years on her birth certificate, but in reality, based on this story, she was 14 years old. Patricia Van Cleve Lake performed in theater during the 1930s and 1940s. When Davies died in 1961, half of her $20 million estate was left to Lake as an inheritance. Before the famous Hearst Castle was built in San Simeon, there was another castle. In 1895, the newspapers made note that the Hearst Castle was nearly complete. It was built in the Spanish style, and the architect was A.C. Schweinfurth. It was made of Holland brick and Mount Shasta lava rock. In the 1880s, Justin Hinckley Sisson, a hunter and outdoorsman, established a hotel, tavern, and restaurant at the foot of Mount Shasta. A railroad was completed in 1887, which brought miners, fishermen, hunters, loggers, and tourists to the spot. He, along with his wife Lydia, operated the inn, and he acquired large parcels of land through the years. He established the town of Sisson, which was renamed to Mount Shasta in 1924. Justin Sisson died in 1893. The structure was built on the famous Stock Ranch near Pleasanton. Mount Diablo lay 25 miles to the northeast. Hearst gave strict orders that the house should not be pictured or described in the Examiner. The architect and builders had the same instructions. Visitors were strictly prohibited, especially if they looked like newspaper people. The railroad was less than a mile away, and Hearst would travel there on his private railroad station. It was constructed in the same style as the house. tile covered, plastered with stucco outside, and laked and plastered inside. Hearst's own apartments took up the entire third floor. In June 1896, most of the furniture and paintings for the Hearst Castle arrived and were noted to be superior to anything ever seen in this country. An automobile road was constructed through several years to connect the castle to McLeod and Mott. In July 1903, Phoebe Hearst, W.R. Hearst's mother, took up residence and renamed the summer home the Wintoun after a local tribe. The construction was not completed yet, but far enough along which allowed the family to take up residence. In April 1905, Mrs. Atlee, a friend of the family, came for a summer visit at what was still referred to as Hearst Castle. Her child disappeared from the house, which fronted the river, and a search found the dead body lodged against some bushes 50 yards below in the water. The coroner refused to come and examine the body, claiming the child met death by accident, despite no one having witnessed what happened. In October 1907, Louisa de Sistuy married Frank Hamilton at the castle. This was one of many society events that were celebrated at the estate throughout the years. In January 1930, Wintoun Castle, as it was now known, was gutted by fire. Defective wiring was blamed for the fire. Hearst and Marion Davies visited the house often and lived there during World War II due to blackout conditions at Hearst Castle in San Simeon. The estate was included in Hearst Holdings when he was forced to sign them over to a group of trustees in 1937 due to bankruptcy. It was maintained by a skeleton crew and today remains privately owned by the Hearst Corporation. So yeah, if you look at the newspapers from that time, of course, this house predated the San Simeon, but it was being referred to even then as the Hearst Castle. And eventually the one that was really living there was his mother. And this was like the place to be at. Just like the Hearst Castle in San Simeon was the place to be at. And this was the, people, very famous, influential people that had weddings. They would summer there, It was like the place to be seen, if Mrs. Hearst, you were her guest, it was like noted in the newspapers, that kind of thing. So yes, and by the way, for any of you seeing the video version of this, you could see how fast that river. It's right. This house is right on the river, so I can see how easily that child might have fallen in, and it's like a fast moving river. So yes, Hearst Castle. If you look at a lot of these really large houses or estates that they were built maybe turn of the century or sometimes earlier, they end up being donated to the state or the county or whoever, because later on they've just become so, expensive to upkeep, all right, that the family turns them over in a lot of cases, like, make it a park, a museum, or this or that. You'd really be surprised. A lot of times the local government won't take it over because of the cost. So yeah, but I believe Hearst Castle is still under the it's still owned by the company or by the corporation, something like that. Okay, next story, also out of Stranger Than Fiction stories, is the Olmec Mystery. Let's go into strange archaeology, shall we? All lands have their secrets, some more ancient than others, and at times all that's left are stories. However, in the jungles of Guatemala, there are vestiges of an ancient civilization that pose a mystery, especially one which is apart from all the others. It was discovered in the 1930s. The earliest settlements in Guatemala date back to 18,000 BC. The people living in the area settled into an agrarian existence, cultivating maize along the Pacific coast that gradually moved inland. Guatemala once was the epicenter of the Mayan Empire. The Olmec people drifted down from southwest Mexico and pioneered the construction of monumental statues, temples, and pyramids. During the last century, several large stone heads were discovered hidden in the Guatemalan jungles. There is a collection of 17 basalt heads that depict male faces with flat noses, slightly cross-eyed, and puffed cheeks. This appearance coincides with the descendants of the Olmecs. It is believed the heads were quarried from basalt found in the Sierra de las Tuxtlas mountain of Veracruz, and were moved about 90 miles, something that could only have been done for an individual of high standing within the Olmec society. Most of these heads were buried around 900 BC. Like many unexpected historical discoveries, they occur to those who are intent on completing a mundane task. So is the story of a farmer working on a sugarcane producing hacienda close to Tres Zapotes, or Hoyapang, who tripped on a buried object. He removed some of the dirt and saw that it was the top of a large head. Enter Jose Maria Melgar y Serrano, who lived in Mexico during the mid-1800s. He died in 1886. He'd been described by different sources as a traveler, journalist, explorer, adventurer, mercenary, antiques finder, and ultimately an amateur archaeologist. The farmer's discovery came to the attention of Melgar, who decided to visit the place in 1862, and he finished unearthing it. He even wrote an article about it in 1869. It wasn't until the 1930s that archaeologist Matthew Sterling undertook an excavation at Tres Zapotes, which is considered the third Olmec capital, located in the Gulf lowlands of Mexico. Sterling was chief of the Smithsonian's Bureau of American Ethnology. In 1943, Olmec heads were unearthed in an area known as La Venta Archaeological Dig in Tabasco, Mexico. In 1969, the National Geographic Society announced the discovery of one of the heads. The expedition was headed by Dr. Lee A. Parson of the Peabody Museum of Archaeology at Harvard University. The head was found near 4 others discovered in the past year. It was 5 feet in height and described as having a huge bald head with sloping brow, frowning lips, and sagging jowls. There is one head, supposedly discovered in Guatemala from the 1930s to the 1950s, that is quite different from the rest. Its origins, as well as the head itself, have proven to be elusive. In 1987, Dr. Oscar Rafael Padilla Lara, a lawyer, philosopher, and vice president and founder of Orígenes Guatemala, received a picture from the Biener family, who owned the property where the statue was discovered. It was about 6 miles from the small village of La Democracia in southern Guatemala. It's not specified if the Biener family is connected to Adolfo Biener, a German-born photographer and postcard publisher working in Guatemala from around 1915 until the 1930s. He is best known for his color cards and photographs. After taking an undeveloped black and white image, he would hand color a master copy. He would hand color, then print the colored photograph, giving a vivid colored image to these romantic photographs. Many photos depict archaeological sites, earthquakes, and portraits, which, by the way, I've looked at them, and they're very nice. The Guatemalan Civil War raged from 1960 to 1996 between the government of Guatemala and various leftist rebel groups. Dr. Padilla related to David Hatcher Childress, author and explorer, that when he reached the place where the head had been discovered, he found it had been destroyed by anti-government rebels, which disfigured it by using it as target practice. It measured over 13 feet tall, with a head resting on a neck. Dr. Padilla could not return to the location due to skirmishes being fought in the area. Childress suggested that Padilla's colossal head is evidence that European faces were known to pre-Hispanic cultures of South America. The story of the unusual head from Guatemala faded once more into obscurity until 2011, when Raul Julia Levy, son of actor Raul Julia, produced a documentary titled Revelations of the Mayan 2012 and Beyond, which used the picture as part of the film. According to Julia Levy, the photo was actually taken in the late 1930s and was published in a magazine and withdrawn from circulation by the, quote, the government of England, end quote. Contrary to the story from Dr. Padilla, he said the colossal head was removed to the United States and hidden. Mejia compared it to the Great Sphinx, the Moises on Easter Island, and Pascual Abaj in Guatemala. He believed this bust in particular was created by an extraordinary and superior civilization that settled in the south of Guatemala and instructed the people of the area. In 2013, Julia Levy lost a dispute arbitrated by the IFTA, which awarded his partner on the documentary Elizabeth Thierot the right title and interest in all footage, and ruled that Levy is not to possess or exploit the footage in any way. Archaeologist Hector Mejia, a faculty member at Universidad de San Carlos in Guatemala, dated the head to between 3500 and 5000 BC. He described it thus, quote, "It is a bust which at first glance can be seen to have an elongated cranium and fine characteristics which are not consistent with pre-Hispanic races of America. I certify that this monument presents no characteristics of Maya, Nahuatl, Olmec, or any other pre-Hispanic civilization. It was created by an extraordinary and superior civilization with awesome knowledge of which there is no record of existence on this planet. Their creative style is not consistent with the civilizations that inhabited the southern coast of Guatemala prior to the arrival of the Spaniards. It is indisputably pre-Olmec and pre-Maya." End quote. In total, 17 colossal heads carved from basalt have been found throughout the jungles of central Guatemala, all depicting faces that are similar, with the exception of the one pictured on the Biner lands. However, it does bear some familiarity to busts found on Easter Island. There has always been controversy in the theory about pre-colonial contact between Polynesian peoples such as the Rapa Nui, who inhabited Easter Island, and the Americas. In 2014, a paper was published titled "Genome-Wide Ancestry Patterns in Rapa Nui Suggest Pre-European Admixture with Native Americans." The results found most Polynesian ancestry from 27 Rapa Nui individuals. Genome-wide patterns consistent with Native American and European admixture were detected, which dated to 1280 to 1945 AD, and European admixture dating to 1850 to 1895 AD. These results can only be explained by one or more pre-European trans-Pacific contact. These findings indicate that the Rapa Nui, after settling on Easter Island, went on to make landfall on the coast of Peru or Chile, which is a trip of over 2,000 miles. They also returned to Easter Island and brought South American natives with them. Where indeed is this bust? Was it destroyed by rebels, secreted away somewhere in the United States, or was the photograph a forgery to begin with? Perhaps one day we'll have an answer, but undoubtedly there are still many mysteries to be unearthed in the jungles, which perhaps have not been seen for hundreds or perhaps thousands of years. Even now, researchers don't quite understand how the Olmecs transported the material from quarries or what the sculpture's precise purpose was. Let me tell you something, and that's a very good question, and you'll see why. The 17 heads range in height from 3.8 to 11.2 feet in height and weigh between 6 to 50 tons. The stones were picked as those closest to the shape of a human head. The heaviest one was abandoned and left uncompleted due to close to the source of its stone. The faces are distinct and depict a mature man. Each has a unique headdress, some featuring birds, others a clawed foot or bird's head. Others have beadwork, tassels, or bands. The back of the heads are flat, suggesting they were placed against a wall or building. Without a written language, the people who made these sculptures left more questions than answers, especially as to how they transported these stones, since the Olmecs did not have animals or wheels to assist in moving them. There's also debate as to whether the Olmec practiced human sacrifice, based upon several archaeological discoveries. At El Manatí, near San Lorenzo, disarticulated skulls, femurs, and complete skeletons of newborns or fetuses were found among ritual offerings, including sacrificed animals. Ceremonial altars a la venta and Las Limas depict limp were-jaguar babies, like werewolf but were-jaguar babies, which some scholars believe is tied to sacrificial practices. The Olmec might have held bloodletting ceremonies as part of their rituals as well. Mass graves at San Lorenzo have individuals with signs of cranial trauma, which are accompanied with valuable grave goods like jade. These persons might have been elites that were sacrificed due to their perceived closeness to the gods. So there you go. Yes, for those of you watching the video version of this, you can see that it's true. The majority of these heads, they're very round, and as a matter of fact, they look very much like the present, population there, and in that area. But then this one photograph here, which if everybody's that you could tell it is totally different. And as you could tell, there's a car right next to it. That car, yeah, it dates to like the 1930s. But anyway, that's one of those mysteries that, was it, you know, what happened to it? Was it destroyed by these rebels that were using it for target practice? Did it even exist, or did the, I don't know, was it overgrown again, or was it taken to the United States? Who knows? A lot of so much, sometimes with archaeology, the more you uncover, the more questions there are, especially like this one. Like, how did this civilization with no wheels, no horses, move all these multi-ton stones around to quarry them and then to carve them? Incredible. Okay, next story, also out of Stranger Than Fiction stories, is titled The Nondescript. It was a hot summer day in 1868 when hunters and dogs chased a quarry through a southern swamp. The tracks were those of a human foot, but the toes were turned backward. Life in the village of Meadville, Mississippi was slow and boring, and the last thing hunters expected to come across was a creature reportedly seen in Vicksburg during the fall of the year before. The setting was the same. The dogs followed a trail a few miles from the Mississippi River. They started to bay, and when the hunters caught up with them, what they found was incredible. It was a man of average height, but well-muscled. He had long, coarse hair hanging from his head to his knees, and long, large tusks protruding from his upper jaw. The hunting party gave chase once more as it ran towards the river. It killed one of the dogs with its tusk. The hunters shot at it, and then it jumped in the water, thrashed about, calling out in a horrible bellow, until it reached the Louisiana shore and disappeared. The Vicksburg story. 25 miles from Vicksburg, near a small stream that emptied into the Mississippi River, was an overgrown swamp that was filled with all kinds of game. It was a peculiar animal that left tracks that seemed to be going both ways at once. One foot pointed to the front and the other to the rear. More strange was the fact that the track measured 23 inches in length. The animal, if that is what it was, would be seen at twilight. It was described as, quote, "The being is about 8 feet high, each eye as large as a hen's egg, with no nose and no upper lip. His 2 eye teeth as large as a man's thumb, extending down over his chin about 8 inches. His right foot points directly to the front, and the left to the rear. And the measurement of the tracks is just 23 inches in length. His fingernails are perfectly hard and solid, and are about 6 inches long. The hair on his head, which is stiff and wiry, sweeps the ground as he walks, and is parted in the rear and brought down in front on each side of his singularly formed chest, which is not round or flat, but is angular like that of a fowl. The hair on the body of the singular being is very still, and grows to the rear, parting at the angle of the breastbone, growing back and uniting with a long, stiff growth on his spine, which extends back about 1 foot like the spinal fin of a fish, or the bristles on the back of a boar. The hair on his arms is parted and grows in the same way, making a long, thick brush on the back of his arms, extending from the shoulders to the point of his middle fingers. The same peculiarity is observable on his legs." End quote. The people in the area said they had seen this unknown animal for several months, and that it would howl hideously. A bear hunting party that brought 15 dogs went into the swamps mounted on horses. Soon they came upon the creature they called the Nondescript. It appeared human, but a monster as well. It jumped into the river and swam across to the opposite bank where the party could not follow. Could this be the creature that would later be named the Honey Island Swamp Monster after it was sighted in 1963? It is described as being over 7 feet tall and weighing about 400 pounds. It has glowing yellow or red eyes and large webbed feet and reptilian hands with long claws. There is also the Chautauqua monster, an ape-like creature sighted in the swamps around the town. It is tall and covered in shaggy dark hair. Its odor can be detected from far off. It also has a piercing scream, and like the Honey Island Swamp Monster, leaves a 3-toed print. Prior to the Civil War, New Orleans' best families built their summer homes at Chautauqua, which is located at the border of Mississippi and Louisiana. Many who came here to escape the threat of yellow fever in New Orleans were officials of the Illinois Central Railroad. Another attraction was an artesian well that exists today. After the end of the war, Redemptorist priests bought land at Chautauqua to establish a seminary and prep college. A portion of it was sold to the School Sisters of Notre Dame in 1879. They established St. Mary of the Pines, which operated as a boarding school from 1884 to 1975. The daughters of New Orleans families were sent to the school, and they told stories of seeing a large creature lurking at the edge of the school property. There's a tale that after a circus train wrecked near the swamps, students at St. Mary saw an ape-like man swinging from the tree branches on the edge of the swamp. Authorities were called, and hunters searched the Tanipahoa swamp but found no sign of the creature. Sam McKinney, a Chautauqua historian, said, "But in doing my research, I find that similar legends exist all along the railroad track in areas north of here where they have a nearby swamp. In Canton, as far north as Cairo, Illinois." According to McKinney, he thinks the reports from the nuns and the students of seeing monkeys near the school are traced back to a place known as Kramer Lodge, named by the mayor of Macomb, Xavier A. Kramer, which had a wildlife preserve on the land. Among the exotic animals he kept were monkeys. During its heyday in the 1930s, Huey Long, the president of Illinois Central, and the Red Cross, among others, would hold meetings and outings at the lodge. In 1941, actress Maureen O'Hara married Will Price at the chapel of St. Teresa at St. Mary's Institute in Chautauqua. There was another report of a highway patrolman who owned land in the area and was plowing a field as twilight was fading. The tractor headlights caught a fleeting image of an upright, hairy creature ducking at the edge of his field into the wood. He never worked that field again by himself. Others believe the story of the ape man was invented by the older students at St. Mary's in order to scare the new students who were homesick and had thoughts of running away back to New Orleans. However, even the nuns had seen the creature. Chautauqua, which was always rural, is now only composed of less than 100 people as of the 2000 census, with a post office and the artesian well across the tracks from the post office. In 2022, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Baton Rouge purchased the property that was once St. Mary's School and began operating it as Our Lady of Hope Retreat Center. This leaves plenty of land and solitude for the Chautauqua monster to live peacefully in the swamps. So what do you think? I mean, this something was being seen there from Civil War times, and then we throw in there maybe the circus wreck, or was it escaped monkeys from the guy's petting zoo, whatever that he had out there at that lodge, or what is it? Or maybe a little bit of each. That's a good question, right? I mean, what were those people seeing out there? And of course now it's become a very it's very isolated out there. Like it wasn't that it was rural to begin with, but I believe it's very, very little people are out there. Okay, next story of Stranger Than Fiction Stories is titled The Sea Tiger. In March 1915, a tourist visiting from Connecticut went fishing off Soldier Key in Biscayne Bay. The shallow waters were clear with an aquamarine tint, so it was easy to make out the 12-foot shark he had on the other end of his fishing line. Harry Sanford not only landed that one shark, but 8 others. The newspaper article referred to it as a leopard shark, which are not found in Florida waters, but it was probably a tiger shark, which are known as man-eaters. This was horribly confirmed when the shark was gutted at the Royal Palm Dock, since it was the largest of all those caught that day. Inside it were human remains. Some wondered if the man had fallen from an ocean steamer or if he swam out too far from a beach. Authorities said the bodies of anyone drowned in the area of Soldier Key had been recovered. So, who was this shark's last meal? Gruesome remains of some horrible sea tragedy. This is what the newspapers wrote. Gruesome remains of some horrible sea tragedy were today found when, in cutting open a huge shark off Soldier Key, the skull and several other bones of a man were found. The bones were all highly polished, indicating that they had been in the shark's stomach for months, possibly years. The other bones found included a shoulder blade, one of the thigh bones, an upper arm bone, and a finger bone. The size of the bones indicated to the authorities that the victim of the shark was a man, and the shape of the skull shows that he was a white man. The bones were all removed to the Combs undertaking rooms." End quote. However, this was not the first time a huge shark was landed at Soldier Key, which is about 4 miles east of Fowey Rock Lighthouse. In 1909, Captain Thompson landed a 15-foot hammerhead shark as it was eating a big whip ray. In 1916, another 15-foot hammerhead shark was landed from the yacht Vixen as it traveled back from the Florida Keys. In 2010, the encounter was with a 12-foot tiger shark. The fishermen didn't have to wait until it was opened up before it was known the fish was a man-eater. The Bahamian investment banker Humphrey Simmons was fishing off the coast of New Providence, Bahamas, on the Asulado. He and 2 other companions had been dodging sharks all day long, who were pursuing the fish they were bringing in. The 3 men went to another fishing spot at about 1,000 feet of depth. Simmons was bringing in a grouper when he caught the shark as well. He intended to release it, but once he brought it close, he realized it was too heavy to bring on board the boat. The shark was shot several times and hauled by its tail to the boat to cut out the hook. This is when the fish regurgitated a human foot intact from the knee down. They tried to raise an agency on the VHF radio, but decided they were too far out. They took the body apart. They took the body part and the shark back to Marine Base. There was so much stink coming from the shark's belly, and the belly was so huge that we thought there might be more bodies inside, said Simmons. Inside were found a right leg, 2 severed arms, and a severed torso. It was a full human body without a head, which accounted for the shark's distended abdomen. There was a suspicion the remains belonged to Delton Judson Newton, one of 2 men who disappeared while swimming to the ironically named Jaws Beach. This was where the 1987 sequel Jaws: The Revenge was filmed. 5 men had gone boating on August 2010 when they ran into engine trouble. 2 of the men decided to swim to Jaws Beach, and this was the last time they were seen alive by the 3 crewmen left on the boat. It was believed they had drowned. The medical examiner sent the remains for forensic examination, which only concluded the parts were indeed human but could not determine the manner of death. Fingerprints indicated the identity of the man was Judson Newton, but DNA confirmed the finding. His sample, when compared to 4 relatives, concluded the, quote, mother of one of the missing fishermen cannot be excluded as a biological mother of the individual associated with the bone and tissue, end quote. Due to the short time between the death of the man and recovery of the remains, which is August to October, is believed to have contributed to the ability to actually identify the remains, which is a rare thing when anything is taken from a shark's stomach. This species of shark is known as the sea tiger and is one of the most dangerous shark species, growing as large as 16 feet. Human remains, when they are found, are mostly found inside of tiger sharks. It's believed the sharks scavenge drowning victims, but they will attack a human who is thrashing about in the ocean. They can digest bones very quickly, and they can also vomit out undigested items, which is why it's very rare to recover anything that can be used for DNA comparison. Friends of Newton, who was also known as Scabo, said they were surprised to think he would have drowned since he was a sailor by trade and an avid fisherman. The 43-year-old was not married or had children. The man who jumped in the water with Newton, Franklin Roosevelt Brown, 62, was never found, and the authorities believed he ended up the same as his friend. The question remains, was he alive when the shark took the first bite as he made his desperate swim to Jaws Beach? Tiger sharks are found worldwide in warm tropical waters, along coastal areas, river estuaries, harbors, shallow bays, coral reefs, seagrass beds, and the open ocean at depths of 1,085 feet and more. They've been spotted in the waters of the Gulf of America, along the coast from Florida to the Carolinas, and throughout the Caribbean Sea. They range into the western Pacific Ocean and have been sighted as far north as Japan and south by New Zealand. These sharks also frequent the coast of Africa, India, Australia, China, Indonesia, and the Red Sea. They are known to follow the warmer Gulf Stream waters northward to the coast of the United Kingdom and Iceland. In 1916, it was written that when a Hawaiian saw a shark near the surface with eyes which, quote, shine red as though they had red glass in them, end quote, he will not go in the water or even on the water. If he's in the water, he will come ashore, since the red-eyed fish is the tiger shark. According to Hawaiians, this species of shark is known to attack a man in the water, and they will follow a fisherman in a canoe if he has taken a lot of fish aboard, and overturn the canoe if they are hungry. Okay. Laverne is the name given to a tiger shark seen in the waters of Kailua Kona, Hawaii. The name originated with local divers and boat captains, which evolved into a code name for any tiger shark entering the harbor waters. The current Laverne is estimated to be around 16 feet long and about 20 years old. She has been a fixture in the area for years. Her fame comes from her tameness and familiarity with humans, as she is fed by local fishermen. In 2013, she was injured by a Hawaiian local who damaged her dorsal fin. However, she can still be seen swimming in the harbor waters. The following are tiger shark encounters. In 1882, stevedores in Mobile Bay, Alabama, caught a 15-foot tiger shark. Inside was a human arm covered with a blue woolen jumper. They believe the remains were those of Augustus Froger, engineer of the tug Colonel Woodruff, who drowned in the bay the week before. In 1897, Harry Thiem, a snapper fisherman, was lying at anchor off Yellow Bluff near the Pensacola coast when an object came within 200 yards of the boat. The men on board said it was a tiger shark, measuring about 35 feet in length, with a head about 5 feet wide. Old fishermen who were on board said it was the largest fish of this species they had ever seen. In 1908, William McCormick had a lucky encounter with a tiger shark, if there is such a thing. He was fishing near Ponce Park on the east coast of Florida and had just baited his hook and thrown it out. He was stooping over the side of the boat, washing his hands, when a monster tiger shark grabbed one hand and would not release it. It took the combined strength of two companions to keep the shark from pulling him overboard. In 1921, Captain Charles H. Thompson of the Tarpon was cruising along the beach with a party of friends. Several tarpons were jumping in the air. One weighing 145 pounds was caught, and a tiger shark measuring about 15 feet tried to take it off the line. The shark was shot in rather shallow water. It was towed to Hardy's Casino, a bathing pavilion in Miami Beach with pools, private rooms, clubs, but no gambling. Onlookers were horrified to think they had been bathing only a few feet from the shark. The casino was destroyed by the Great Hurricane of 1926. In 1976, shrimp boat captain Jimmy Ramsey landed a 14-foot tiger shark, which was caught in his fishing nets. This was 12 miles off Galveston Island. Inside the 400-pound shark, they found a jawbone, part of a skull, a hand, an arm, and leg bones. The jawbone contained a full set of teeth with extensive dental repairs and gold caps. The remains were turned over to the Coast Guard. In 1982, two men went on an all-night fishing trip off Hollywood Beach and caught a tiger shark weighing over 360 pounds and measuring about over 9 feet in length. Inside it, they found a pair of human legs. The right leg had on a sock and an Adidas tennis shoe. There was a thigh portion of the left leg. The Emmy examined the parts and believed the limbs were those of a white male in his early 20s, weighing about 190 pounds, between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet in height. The cause of death was unknown. It was estimated he was dead between a day to 4 days before. There were no missing person reports or shark attacks that matched the victim. The person remained unknown. Only a few months before, in February of 1982, Kim Seibel, 29, a diver from Homestead, Florida, went missing after he was separated from a companion while spearfishing 5 miles off Elliott Key. His body was not found, but his mask, flipper, and bathing suit were found with at least 50 teeth marks on them. It was believed he died as a result of a shark attack, possibly a mako, but it was never certain what killed him. Stories of monster sharks have existed since time immemorial, including those that are known to attack boats. Many could claim the stories are fishermen's yarns, products of mistaken identity, or overactive imagination. However, one cannot deny they might not be numerous, but there is a chance these monsters do swim in deep waters. And these smaller cousins, like the tiger sharks, who prefer warmer waters, are just hunting for an aperitif, which are occasionally humans. So yeah, this is along the lines of, like that movie, The Meg, something that comes up from the depths. But yeah, I mean, besides, to me, if I saw a shark that size, forget it. To me, it is a monster shark. but something like that's 15, 20, and talk about like, no. Yeah. So anyway, next story, we're going to Gateway Pundit. This is titled, New Military Surveillance Video Shows Glowing UFOs Splitting a Hellfire Missile Midair. Witnesses admit no known U.S. technology can do this. Okay, now this is dated September 9th, so this is very recent. On Tuesday morning, Capitol Hill was rocked by the release of a never-before-seen military surveillance video showing what appears to be a glowing orb, an unidentified anomalous phenomena UAP, shrugging off a U.S. Hellfire missile like it was a paper airplane. The 100-pound air-to-ground missile literally bounced off the craft, barely leaving an impact before the UAP shot away at impossible speeds. The shocking footage captured by an MQ-9 Reaper drone off the coast of Yemen on October 30th, 2024, was unveiled by Representative Eric Burleson during the latest congressional hearings on UAPs. Burleson wrote, "Below is the video I revealed at our UAP hearing today, made available to the public for the first time. October 30th, 2024, MQ-9 Reaper allegedly tracking orb off coast of Yemen. Green light given to engage. Missile appears to be ineffective against the target. Footage presented as received from a whistleblower. Independent review is ongoing." The hearing, titled Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection, was led by Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets Chairwoman Anna Paulina Luna. Luna minced no words, blasting the intelligence community for stonewalling the American people. Quote, "In today's UAP hearing, we received new military surveillance video showing a UAP splitting a Hellfire missile in midair. Not a single witness was aware of any U.S. military technology capable of such a feat. Every witness described the footage as extremely scary." End quote. In her opening statement, Task Force Chairwoman Luna condemned the federal government and intelligence agencies for the persistent lack of transparency on research and disclosure surrounding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. She stressed that UAPs pose serious threats to U.S. national security and emphasized the urgent need for the federal government to finally acknowledge and address them. Excuse me. She's quoted as saying, "I have now spoken to a number of whistleblowers from the military, to include at the infamous Eglin Air Force Base incident that occurred when myself and former Rep. Matt Gaetz, as well as Representative Burchett, followed up on a lead from multiple active duty Air Force pilot whistleblowers that alleged that the United States Air Force was covering up UAP activity at Eglin Air Force Base. We have heard from a number of whistleblowers, specifically military pilots, that the reason for not coming forward publicly is out of fear that speaking out would cost them their flight status and potentially their careers. That is unacceptable. We cannot protect our airspace if our best trained observers are silenced. We cannot advance science if we refuse to ask questions. And we cannot maintain trust in government if we keep the American people in the dark. Now Congress has tried to fix this problem. But the reality, the reports that come in are too often brushed aside, slow-walked, or met with skepticism rather than serious investigation. Recently, the former AARO director, known as Sean Kirkpatrick, attacked our witness and members on this committee. It should be noted that he is a documented liar and brings into question what his purpose at AARO really was, if it was not to follow up on investigations and disclose his findings to members of Congress. A former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Chris Mellon, described a report published by ARRO that found no evidence that any USG investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed that any sighting of a UAP represented extraterrestrial technology. As the most error-ridden and unsatisfactory government report I can recall reading during or after decades of government service. Mellon further noted that this was the first ARRO report submitted to Congress without the Director of National Intelligence sign-off, and seemingly excluded input from any of the scholars or experts who have studied and written extensively on this topic, as would normally be the case in another field. Mellon determined that the report failed to fulfill the congressional mandate under which it was required, omitted entire agencies with known investigations or activities related to UAP, and omitted any discussions of efforts to hide classified or unclassified information about UAP. Such efforts weren't addressed by the report despite the existence of agency records and investigations concerning them, including at U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The witnesses today are not alone, far from it. In fact, 34 senior military, government, and intelligence officials have broken their silence. This includes Senator Rubio, Senator Rounds, Senator Gillibrand, General Jimmy Clapper, the former director of the government's UAP task force, the former head of aviation security on the White House National Security Council, a former Secretary of Defense, and many more. To quote Senator Rubio in the upcoming documentary Age of Disclosure, even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to spin out of control. And to quote Senator Gillibrand, who went public in an upcoming documentary, it's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees. It is time for the fundamental truths around UAP to be revealed to our nation's leaders and to the public. 3 decorated veterans, Navy and Air Force, testified under oath recounting chilling encounters with bizarre craft. And then it goes on. So, what do you think? Because, see, this is the thing. Because in that he's saying UAPs as extraterrestrials, because I think that's one of the questions here. Yes, obviously they're UAPs or UFOs, which is what I think of them as. But what is really their origin? Are they off planet? Are they truly manned by extraterrestrials? Or are they us with maybe super duper secret squirrel research that's been developed that maybe is kept from Congress and even the president? All right. Is that it? Is it us? You know, everything that everybody's been running around saying, oh, it's a flying saucer. We don't have saucers. Maybe we do have saucers. Who knows what we have? Maybe there's a lot of technology that they've developed that we have no idea how that it's been developed, or that it seems so far advanced. That's like, how could we? And maybe we do have that capability. And yeah, I agree. I think we need to get to the bottom of this. I don't know whether we're going to get to the bottom or what, but it's not like guys. There's plenty of weird out there, so I will be back with you soon with a lot more weird. Till next time.